On Life and Meaning is brought to you by Blumenthal Performing Arts, celebrating its 25th year presenting the best in the performing arts, sharing and employing the arts as a major catalyst to strengthen education, building community cohesiveness, and advancing economic growth. Further support is provided by Charlotte Mecklenburg Library, one of America's leading urban public libraries, delivering exceptional services and programs with a mission to improve lives and build a stronger community. And by the Arts and Science Council, Charlotte Mecklenburg's resource hub and lead advocate for the regional cultural community, providing culture for all.
I told my dad, who passed away last October, I just told him, I said, you just totally changed our family when you bought that store. Not that we made a lot of money. We very, very, modest means, but working together, the lessons we learned, I have a speech that I call Everything I Learned at the corner of Jackson and Maine. And I did, working with my dad. He taught me that work could be fun. We taught teamwork, collaboration, know how to run a business. It's just, it was the best thing that ever happened to our family. He transformed it by making that bold decision. And he didn't have the money to really buy that store either, and he was only in his early 30s. It was a bold move. And so I learned boldness from my dad.
Mike McGuire is CEO of Grant Thornton LLP, an independent accounting and advisory firm. Mike has more than 30 years of experience working closely with high-growth startup and middle-market companies, assisting in capital market transactions, ranging from angel investing, initial public offerings, merger and acquisition strategies, due diligence, and deal structure. Before joining Grant Thornton in 2002, Mike served as Carolinas Audit Division Head for Arthur Andersen LLP. Mike has received many awards and honors, including Most Admired CEO by Charlotte Business Journal and the Top 100 People in Accounting by Accounting Today. In this episode, we explore how he sees his work as CEO, the importance of culture, technologies disrupting the accounting industry, and how growing up in the grocery business informs who he is today. I'm Mark Paris, and this is On Life and Meaning. Mike, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
How do you describe Grant Thornton?
Well, Grant Thornton is a global accounting firm that I think is different from all the other accounting firms in the world. Certainly we have scope and scale, 50,000 people around the world. We're 600 offices, 135 countries, which a lot of people may not understand. So, we have scope and scale. But I think Grant Thornton is significantly different from a lot of professional services firms, certainly from the other accounting firms. And I think it really goes around several key factors. One is culture. I think we have a unique culture. Secondly is our organization structure. We're a very flat organization, which actually provides for us the ability to shift quickly on the fly, make decisions a lot faster. If you think about an accounting firm, most people don't think of accounting firms having speed and agility, right? It's accounting firms have generally been around for 100 years. We're close to 100 years, but we have intentionally flattened the organization to be able to make decisions faster. So our culture and our agility, I think, and the ability to make decisions faster allows us to be more innovative. What I would say the modern firm, that we're really up with the times, if you will.
I do want to talk about the structure because it seems unique. Can you explain the relationship between Grant Thornton LLP, of which you are CEO, and other Grant Thornton national member entities, which I assume have their CEOs?
Sure.
And Grant Thornton International, of which Peter Bowden is global CEO. How does it all work out?
Well, actually, it's really only two levels in it. It's number one is Grant Thornton U.S., which is roughly about a third of the size of the global organization. We're structured exactly like all the major accounting firms. It's a member firm organization, and so there's no other firm that's organized differently from the way we are. So it's that in that case. It's just as similar as all of our competitors. I sit on the global board, and we have the same methodology. We have the same. We use a Grant Thornton brand. I mean, if you're in a Grant Thornton office in Stockholm, or you're in a Grant Thornton office in Shanghai, or in a Grant Thornton office in Brazil, it's the same. I mean, you're going to see the Grant Thornton logo. We all use the same technology platform and things like that. So from that side, Grant Thornton, we work very closely together. Like I say, I sit on the global board. Our strategy is the same, brand's the same, so it's pretty similar.
How do you manage clients across national jurisdictions?
Well, it's very simple because we have a member firm agreement, and to our clients, it's one Grant Thornton. It's very seamless, and with technology, certainly it's a lot easier today than it was, say, 30 years ago. With our audit methodology, for example, or tax methodology, we have a global software platform. So, sharing files and things of that in a secure fashion, it's seamless. It really is. I mean, and one of our global values are CLEARR, and we call them our clear values. But the C is collaboration. And so, and I think not only because it's easier to say clear and start it with a C, but we believe in collaboration. So, we're when we sit down to serve a client, we serve it as a global team.
Mike, how do you see your role as CEO of Grant Thornton? When you wake up in the morning, what is your job?
My job is to set the strategy for the firm and to motivate and inspire our people to execute and to succeed. I mean, for us to be able to deliver an inspiring experience for all of our people. We feel like we call our strategy a people-first strategy. If you hire the best people, you train, motivate them, they're informed. I mean, they're going to represent you at our clients. They're going to deliver value to our clients, creative solutions to our clients. So they have to be informed and they have to be inspired. So that's what I do. I mean, I spend my time getting out of their way and trying to get out of their way. So they can succeed and provide them with the tools and the inspiration to do it and deliver it every day.
Accounting firms seem brand obsessed, branding and rebranding and producing taglines to distinguish themselves from the pack. PricewaterhouseCoopers, confidence in the future. Deloitte, your experience matters. Ernst & Young, building a better working world. KPMG, cutting through complexity. Grant Thornton, you're about status quo. What do you make of all these taglines?
Well, I think that, for us, status quo for me is really more about the way we do business and really about the future of Grant Thornton and the way we serve our clients and the way we run our business internally. Our business is, we've been around for 100 years, and people don't really associate change, or certainly rapid change, with an accounting firm, right? People mostly think it's very slow to change. So what we want to disrupt the accounting profession in a positive way, and that is around, we want to change the status quo, but we want to do it with speed. So that's how we got status quo. So status quo is changing the status quo by adding an element of speed. So this is really, ours isn't really a tagline as much as it is the way we do business. In today's environment, time is actually the most important asset of any business leader, or probably most people. I mean, everybody says they don't have enough time. I mean, and so what we feel like is, in a time when all businesses are being disrupted through technology, nobody wants to hear about a 3 or 5 year plan to roll out new technology or have a digital platform. I mean, it's now. So our clients that need to adopt new technologies or innovate need to do it yesterday, not in 3 to 5 years. So that's kind of the way we look at it. Is it's really our style of advising our clients. We have a sense of urgency. We're the type A of accounting firms, I guess you could say.
Does the market have difficulty differentiating between accounting firms?
I think so. I think that just on the surface they do. I mean, if you think, people trust their accounting firm. People trust that they're going to get the right technical answer. I mean, I think those are table stakes. I mean, regardless of the firm you go to, you're going to follow you're going to follow the accounting pronouncements, or you're going to follow the tax law. I mean, the technical part of the business is there. And that's an expectation of us. I mean, if you go hire an architect, you expect the foundation of your house and the construction to be sound, right? You don't want to build the Leaning Tower of Pisa, right? So, but you expect that any architectural firm or engineering firm that does that is going to get the technical side right. I think the differentiation actually happens in the way you deliver your service and the kinds of people that you bring. And I think that the organizational structure of accounting firms and their corporate culture are the real differentiating factors among the accounting firms. Now, and the thing that I'm exceptionally proud of with our people is I get on planes and I sit beside somebody and I've got Grant Thornton stuff all over, logos on my computer and my computer bag, and people will say, "Oh, you work for Grant Thornton?" "Yeah, what do you do?" "Well, I'm the CEO." "We use you. We use Grant Thornton for X, Y, or Z. Let me tell you about the people who work for me." And they name 3 or 4 people from the team, and they go on and on and on. And I'm like, keep it coming. I love this. But I think it's the thing that makes me so proud of our team around that is that experience. Compare that if they said, "We use Grant Thornton for some stuff. I'm not really sure. And I can't remember who's on the team." Okay. I never hear that. I hear the specific things that we're working on, and they just sing the praises of our people, sometimes 4 and 5 people deep. That's an experience. That means to me that they really see a difference in us.
I imagine all the Big Four vouch for their people. Is there something that you hire for? Is there a quality that you seek in Grant Thornton personnel?
Oh, yeah. Culture. We hire for culture. People have to be a cultural fit. We have some exceptional people apply to Grant Thornton, and when it gets down to the end, we're doing the team does the assessment, and when it all comes in, it doesn't happen very often, but there are times that we just say, look, this person has incredible capabilities and talent, but we don't think they're a cultural fit. And if that's not checked that they're a cultural fit, we won't hire them. I don't care it doesn't matter who they are. We will not hire them if it doesn't fit, because we know it's not a long. We hire people for the long haul. I mean, we want people to come to Grant Thornton for the rest of their career. I tell people when I hire them, I want this to be the best job you've ever had. So I never talk to them about coming to work for us for 3 years. So we've got to make sure. It's like a marriage, right? We have our people and we want them here forever. And so if we don't think it's somebody that can succeed in our organization for a long period of time, we won't even start out and hire them.
But cultural fit means what in terms of personality traits?
Well, I think the 2 things I like a lot. One is, certainly our values is absolutely, those are table stakes. I mean, people, we do a values assessment. Then I think as part of our culture is a culture of innovation. And I like to say curiosity and courage, right? So curiosity innovation can make you very innovative, right? But if you don't have courage, or conviction to make a decision, then you just are sitting around, you're curious all the time, right? Curious people are fun, but if they don't get anything done, you're sitting around in the age of wonderment, and coming up with great ideas. That's not really for us. We like for people to be curious and say, here's how we're going to challenge the status quo with innovative ideas, but then we execute it. And so to me, the courage is the courage to make a decision and execute it.
Mike, you've said your goal for Grant Thornton is to be the Tesla of the accounting industry. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's really about innovation and being creative and challenging the status quo. So, Elon Musk challenged the status quo, certainly with Tesla, with the major automakers, and he's a leader in terms of not being afraid. So he actually has curiosity and the courage to make a decision. Challenged NASA. I mean, who would have ever thought? I mean, I grew up during this space race. Who would ever thought anybody than the federal government could send a rocket into space and successfully land it back on Earth, other than NASA? And he proved that. Obviously he was one of the founders of PayPal. So I think he's challenging conventional thinking, and that's what I want us to be. I want us to be innovators. I want us to be leaders. I want us to be decisive and bring solutions to our clients that perhaps are outside of what the ordinary would be. So that's where we feel like I felt like that, that metaphor was not just for our clients or potential clients. It was actually for our people as well, and to wrap ourselves around innovation. We have a culture of innovation at Grant Thornton. We don't believe that the best ideas come from the top down. We believe that they come from the bottom up. I mean, we could have an intern that's with us in the summer that comes up with a great idea and says, why are we doing it this way? And so we need to have that kind of an environment, which we do, that everyone can contribute in the organization. We have about 8,800 people in the United States, and I say, we're 8,800 people strong, or 8,800 ideas strong, and we like to see our people, always challenging. Everything is subject to change and improvement in our organization. That's what I want. I want the entire organization to say, we can. You know what? We did it this way last year, but we can do it better.
Do you think of yourself as the Elon Musk of accountants?
No, I think, I certainly have a very high level of insatiable curiosity. Peter Browning actually is a friend of mine here in Charlotte. He's a longtime mentor of mine, and a lot of people know him. But, Peter introduces me to, if there's somebody he's introducing me to that I don't know, he always introduces me as an entrepreneur cleverly disguised as an accountant. And so I think that's probably a good description. I don't have access to capital that Elon Musk has. I guess is probably a big difference.
Mike, I'd like to run a few words by you and ask if you could explain the word and the relevance of these words to the future of accounting. Blockchain.
Well, I think blockchain has, first of all, it's a way for the way in the simplest words is to use cryptography to prove ownership or secure transactions. So it could be that you have a chain of cryptograms that can prove that you own a stock or something like that. So from an accounting standpoint, we're certifying financial statements, or take a balance sheet. If a client has a certain amount of cash or a certain amount of investments, you can go back and through a blockchain, you can actually prove that they actually own it. So I think that it's going to be something that's revolutionary for us. We think it has a chance to really change the world, and so we're making significant investments. I think the big challenge on blockchain right now is universal acceptance and standardization. We're doing some small applications for clients and things around blockchain, but ultimately it has to be accepted worldwide. I look at it like VHS and beta. At some point you have to decide on a standard. So we're still in the early stages, but we think it could be revolutionary.
Cryptocurrencies.
Well, cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Ethereum, but is significant, but it also uses cryptography. So there's a similarity between blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies, to prove the ownership or provenance of it, goes through a chain to prove that you've got it. I think the problem is right now is, and it could be like music sharing, right? There's always an early adopter of things like that, like Napster, and then ultimately sometimes it's a second iteration of it. And so I think what's going to happen is somebody's going to get a standard around cryptocurrency to where it's well established. But I think also you get companies like Ethereum that are focused on smart contracts, which I think is another. Probably, I think smart contracts has a chance to be more acceptable than cryptocurrencies right now.
Data analytics.
Well, data analytics is something where that's what we are. I mean, when you do accounting and financial consulting and taxes, that's what you're dealing with is data all the time. I think, the issue is you think about how much data is created every day in the world. We're swimming in data. And so it's what do you do with it, and how do you take structured and unstructured data and make something of it? You can see somebody's buying patterns, and like Amazon does, and then it's the prediction that you can do with the analytics. But people have to be able to figure out what to do with all of this data that we have, and how to make it relevant for decision making.
Robotics.
Robotics is it's funny. I think if you think about robotics, probably people will have different pictures come in their mind. I mean, it could be anywhere from the toy robot to to a welding machine on an assembly line, or your vacuum cleaner and things like that. But, robotics really, the way we look at it, it's a way for us to use software to get things done that are very repetitive in nature. And so we're looking at a lot of things using robotics to take tasks and mundane tasks to make them simpler. We don't look at it as a way to replace people. We look at it as a way to take some of the low value, more mundane things they're doing, replace that with robotics, and then redeploy their hours that they're spending on the mundane and put it into the more creative and the more valuable. I told my team this, and one of the people does a 3 days, 8 hours a day reconciliation every month for a regulatory reason, right? She said, we could put a robotics application in, and that can be done in seconds, every month, accurately, over and over again. And then the person that takes 3 days of her month can actually do more high value things in the organization, which is actually more satisfying to her. And we really we're very excited and bullish on robotics.
You don't anticipate that all these technologies will reduce headcount?
I mean, I think it could, in the long run. But from our standpoint, I think the way I look at it is, we could dramatically grow our business and not add a whole lot of people. If you think about it, if I said double our business today, 20 years ago, somebody said, well, you're going to double the number of people you have. I think we could double our business today and maybe increase by 10% because most of that growth is going to be absorbed by that. But I think, the kinds of people we hire they don't want to come in and make copies and, do the mundane things. I think it's an exciting time for our people to be able to be more creative.
Mike, is there any change you would make to GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles?
Yes, I think so. One of the things I think is that business moves very fast. I would say when I say GAAP, I'm just talking about the whole guidance and the standards that our industry uses. Business moves so fast that a lot of businesses are doing things before the standards get set. And then the standards setting bodies have to come in and try to catch up. My preference would be that more of the leading issues, they have the emerging issues task force. The emerging issues task force or emerging issues need to be farther out. I'll give you a good example is, software was being developed and people were selling software in a different revenue model. Well, the standards didn't lead that. The industry led it. The standard setters had to kind of come back and say, okay, what are they all doing? Well, this doesn't make sense, and now they have to change it while the business process has already been done. So, I think it has to be more future-oriented, looking for issues and surfacing issues earlier, get the standards out there on the same lap of the race as business, and I think it's possible to do it. But business moves quickly.
Mike, we talked about status quo and emerging technologies. As you position the firm into the future, what are the difficult issues facing your clients that you see on the horizon?
Well, I think by far the most difficult issue is technology disruption and business disruption because of that. Digital platforms. I was reading a statistic not too long ago, and it said that 90% of CEOs feel like they need a digital strategy, but only about 3% or 5%, a very small percentage, have a chief digital officer. That's a tremendous amount of misalignment. Like say, using the banking example, if you're a bank that doesn't have an online banking application, good luck. You're going to have to do that. I was also reading an article several months ago. It was talking about 25% of all companies are going to be able to successfully transform to be a digital company. Only 25%. The other 75% will either be acquired or go away. That's a pretty bold statement. I've tested that with CEOs over the last couple of months since I read that article. And what surprises me is everybody tells me that they don't believe the 25%. And I said, well, you think it's too low? And they all say, every one of them told me, I think it's too high. That they don't think even 25% will be able to make that. And that's not just, I'm not talking about banking. I'm talking about business in general, because that's where disruption comes. I mean, you sit there and think of Uber and Airbnb. Look at what Uber and the ride sharing companies have done to Hertz, for example. Mm-hmm. Companies like that have to have a digital strategy to be able to survive.
Disruption occurs because of blind spots. Do you think true disruption in the accounting industry will come from outside the industry?
It could. I think it depends on how fast we move. I think it's very difficult to disrupt your own business. I mean, I think, I use Eastman Kodak, and I know it's an overused example, but I was talking to somebody who was advising Eastman Kodak a number of years ago, and they said, Eastman Kodak, who developed digital photography, knew that digital was going to disrupt. Probably didn't even use Clayton Christensen, probably hadn't used the term disruption, but they knew that digital was going to happen. But they had the time frame wrong. I mean, they thought it was 10 to 15 years when it was, a couple of years. And they should have done it differently. But see, I think, to me, if you're going to be a disruptor, you've got to get your culture right. A culture has to be able to embrace change, or you're going to have to force the change some way. And I think if you look back, not to Monday morning quarterback Eastman Kodak, I think what they should have done is created two different businesses, the traditional business and the business of the future, being the digital business. They probably should have moved it even to another city and had different people, because you're all in the same lunchroom, and the big traditional business is going to be telling them, well, this isn't going to change, or we've done it that way for 30 years. It's going to be that way for the next 30 years. And it didn't happen. So, I mean, I think you got to get the culture right, and you got to do something structurally different. We actually call it Engine 1 and Engine 2. Engine 1 would be the traditional photography business. Engine 2 would be digital, and you got to look at them differently. But the innovation that comes out of Engine 2 should go back and be deployed into Engine 1 to be able to to improve the existing business. I think Kodak could have learned some things around digital, perhaps, that would have helped their traditional photography business.
Mike, I do want to talk about tax reform and tax policy.
Yeah.
Accounting firms help corporate clients pay less taxes. Corporate tax revenue as a percentage of GDP is the lowest it's ever been, from over 7% after World War II to just over 2% today, shifting the tax burden to individual taxpayers. In serving narrow corporate interests, are accounting firms serving society?
Well, I think, you have to understand that taxation is something that is broader. I think when people think of taxes, they first think of federal tax, right? They don't look at the entire, all the taxing jurisdictions. I mean, if you're in Europe and around the world, you've got VAT, you've got taxes like that are more consumption based. You've got property taxes, sales taxes, use taxes, permits, all across the board. I mean, if you think about all the things that you pay, when you fill up your gas tank, you're actually paying a tax. Some taxes are buried into the price of things. There may be a tax, you go out and buy a ticket to the Hornets or whatever, there's going to be taxes that support the Convention and Visitors Authority, so, you have to really look at at all of taxes in total. I think it's easy to isolate on one federal tax rate or whatever, because I think what happens is sometimes, and you can see it today, I think with the federal tax, with tax reform, limiting deductions for property taxes and state income taxes, something's going to change. There's an exodus out of the higher tax states. I mean, it's California. I was reading a study several months ago about the number of people who are leaving California. Most of them are actually just going over the border into Nevada. But right now, and I think you'll look at this. I think this is one of those things that you look at in the future. People are going to vote with their feet, if you will. So everybody is trying to optimize where their tax position is, and that's really what people do on a global basis. So, for example, people use tax policy for economic development, and that's why some countries like Ireland, for example, decided that they wanted to attract technology companies. So they started doing that. So a lot of technology companies and people started moving there. So, you have to look at it, I think, holistically as to what's going on, because irrespective of it, companies and people end up moving. I mean, people will move from some of the higher tax states unless somebody does something different with their tax program.
I guess I'm asking a very basic question, which is, when you help your clients not pay taxes, are you doing a good thing?
I think so. I mean, if you think about what people would do with, what companies are doing even today. So we reduced the tax rates with tax reform. There's more money to invest. I mean, if you have $100, right, and you pay 50% of it in tax, you have $50 to do other things with, whether it's R&D or to hire people. If it's 90 you're paying in taxes and you only have 10. But if it's down and you're paying 10 in taxes, then you have other things to be able to do. And I believe, in my view, that companies that have, some companies with tax reform gave their people raises or gave them bonuses and did things. But, there is there's a fixed amount of money, and it's ultimately how you divvy that up and how you spend it. So, we like to see our clients, have the money to be able to expand through growth and create jobs and other uses for their money, training programs for their people. And things like that. So I think it really gets to be, it's you have money, and it's what you ultimately do with it. What's the most efficient use of that?
Mike, you recently brought Diane Swonk on board as your chief economist. Tell us that story.
Well, I saw Diane many years ago when she worked for Mesirow Financial. I saw her on NBC Nightly News, and every time she was on there, I always watched it because I love economics, and I'm always watching trends and things. Part of it's for my job, but part of it is just out of interest. If I wasn't an accountant, I'd be an economist. But so I watched her, and I thought, gosh, and I just coveted that Mesirow Financial sign, in back of her. And I thought, wow, if I hired her at Grant Thornton, maybe there'd be a Grant Thornton sign. So I tried for about 7 years through a lot of channels in Chicago and other places to get an audience with Diane. And so then she left Mesirow, and she had her own consulting company. I think it was just called D. Swonk Economics, DS Economics, I think it was. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I meet Diane? And I want to bring her to Grant Thornton. So one day I'm in Chicago having breakfast with one of my partners, and I walk over, and she said, "You walked right by Jim Brady." Jim happens to be one of my partners too. "You walked by Jim Brady, you didn't see him." He had his back to me, and I said, "Oh, what's he doing?" She said, "Oh, he's having breakfast with somebody." I turned around, he's having breakfast with Diane Swonk. And so I went over and introduced myself, and then I basically told her I've been trying to get a meeting with her for about 7 years. And so we set time to go out and have a drink with Jim and with Diane, and by golly, wasn't very long after that she came to work for us. So in this bit, you have to be patient and persistent. I'm very type A, but I'm very patient. We just recently signed on Ricky Fowler as a golfer and the PGA Tour. I worked on that for 7 years. Must be something about 7 years for me. Maybe I get the 7-year itch or something, but you were persistent, and ultimately the timing worked. Ricky was with Ricky and the Players Championship and the PGA Tour, and with status go, once everything lined up, we made a decision.
Mike, I'd like to talk about you, the person, and how you came to be who you are today. Where did you grow up?
I was born in Indiana, and then my family, my dad was in the grocery business, and his dream, as you can imagine, in a lot of retail businesses, there are a lot of hours involved. And so as my dad was moving up in major, grocery store, he just had this, he just felt like his growing family, he wasn't having the time that he wanted to spend with us kids. And so he just thought if he could get his own store someday, he would like to do that, and he could control his destiny and still be in the grocery business, which he adored. But every time we were on vacation, if it's somewhere in the Midwest, we would always find ourselves going to a grocery store, every once in a while. My dad would do that. "Yeah, there's a grocery store for sale here. I want to go look at this." Always in small towns. So he ended up buying one in Ohio in 1969. And so we moved there. I was my younger brother was 9. I was 10. My older brother was 11. And I say my dad did that. He was very smart when he did it. Is number one, he had very cheap labor available to him, and he could feed us all. We were like, say, 9, 10, 11. We were getting ready to go in our teen years. He could feed us at cost. So it was a good move for him.
And your mom?
Well, my mom always worked. She was a bank teller, but she came to work for. She was a cashier in the grocery store. My grandmother was a cashier in a grocery store, so the whole thing was a very family environment. It really it's something that I think is the best thing that ever happened to me. It was when I told my dad, who passed away last October. I mean, I just told him, I said, you just totally changed our family when when you bought that store. Not that we made a lot of money. We very, very, modest means, but working together, the lessons we learned. I have a speech that I call everything I learned at the corner of Jackson and Maine, and I did, working with my dad. He taught me that work could be fun. We taught teamwork, collaboration, know how to run a business. I mean, it's just, it was the best thing that ever happened to our family. He transformed it by making that bold decision. And he didn't have the money to really buy that store either, and he was only in his early 30s. It was a bold move. And so I learned boldness from my dad.
What was the name of your store?
It was McGuires Foodland. It was a Foodland store, and I mean, it was the main store in a small town, and so we got to know everybody. I think one of my favorite books is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and one of the things he talks about is high potential people. And one of the things that determined high potential people ultimately being successful, one was the ability to socially interact with people, to not be intimidated by people, and to be able to just to live life on the same plane with everybody. And I think that happened. I mean, the mayor of the town, our teachers, our coaches, our pastor from our church, everybody came in, and I realized very quickly that, hey, the mayor eats hamburger too, and it just breaks the whole thing down. You see people in their human element as opposed to, whatever their title is. And that has helped me a lot in terms of engaging with people.
When you walk into a grocery store today, do you think of the family business?
I always think of the family business, and I think it's really funny. Something odd happens to me when I'm in grocery stores. It seems like about every 3 or 4 times I'm in one, people actually come up to me. Now, a lot of times I'm stopping by the store to get something, for our house or for my wife. But people always stop me and they say, where can I find the macaroni or something? And like they think I work at the store. So maybe a part of it's because I'm in a tie. Maybe I look like it, but maybe my upbringing looks like that I'm knowledgeable about what I'm doing. But I always have to tell people, well, I think it's over on aisle 5. I don't work here, but I can help you, But I do get that a lot.
What were you interested in as a teenager?
I was very interested in sports. I played a lot of sports, and I was pretty much a fanatic about it. I mean, I would go. I played football in high school, and we have 2-a-day football practices, and of course I'd get cleaned up after football. Then I would have to work in the store. We all had our work times that we had to be there, and then I'd get off of work and I'd be out playing basketball with my buddies at night. I wish I still had that kind of ambition or stamina or certainly metabolism, because I didn't have an ounce of extra weight on my body, because my mom would have to almost force us to eat because we were always outside playing.
Mike, many of the guests I've spoken to have said as they have matured, they've become more of the person they once were. Is that true for you?
I think so. I mean, I felt like I've always been very grounded because of my parents, and it doesn't take me very long to remember back at the corner of Jackson and Maine, and I think that they taught us to think about other people, and I think one of the things I love about being the CEO of our firm is watching our people succeed, and watching a business succeed, and all the other aspects of working with people to achieve goals. So, I mean, I think that I do believe that sometimes I look at things, and I look at Grant Thornton, and I look at the world, and I sit back, and I still feel like I'm this 10-year-old at McGuires Foodland. And when the phone rings, I feel like I want to say, McGuires Foodland, how can I help you? And I still feel that way. And I mean, I have a picture of my dad's store under my blotter, and I look at it all the time. I think about it all the time. And my dad, like I said, passed away last fall, and I always think about things. What would my dad do? That's never really changed. I would never. I still can't believe. I almost like I feel like I'm in some sort of a dream, I got to pinch myself, and I'm going to wake up to my dad saying, "Hey, you got to be in the store at 9 o'clock," and so I don't feel like I've ever really, I certainly spend time doing things that I would never imagine. I mean, I just filmed a commercial with Ricky Fowler out at Quail Hollow this week, and they're putting the makeup on me, put a lot of makeup on me, which I need, but they, you get done with something like that, and, you take a picture of it. They've taken pictures of it, and they post it out on social media, and a lot of people react to it. And it's like, wow. And Ricky came over to my house, and I invited my brother, who lives in Belmont, and I invited one of my high school buddies. One of my best friends from high school in Ohio lives north of Charlotte by the university, and I invited Scott over to the house to meet Ricky. And so I'm not very far from where I grew up. I mean, we grew up in a little town of 1,600, and I had two of those 1,600 out at my house, sitting out in the backyard, talking to Ricky this week. And I wake up every day grateful for what I have, and and the people that I get a chance to work with, and my family and everything. And I've never ever feel like I've ever deviated from that. I'm sure I eat nicer restaurants, and I take better trips than I used to. I have a nicer car than I used to, but other than that, I don't feel like there's a whole lot different about me. I stay very grounded with my family and even my friends from home.
Would your childhood friends recognize you today?
Well, it depends on how long it's been since they've seen me, because I weigh quite a bit more than I did back when I was a kid, because I was outside playing all the time. But I think they would. I mean, I still go to all of my class reunions. I don't. I value that. I like to go see them. I think certainly with social media, I have people say, wow, you're the most successful person to graduate from our high school, and or whatever. I mean, I don't count stuff like that. I don't look at things like that. I just want to be, I want to be their classmate, and I still do. I still do a lot of things with them, and it's important for me to visit them, to to go to my class reunions and things like that. I think that I think it's important to do that.
Mike, you went to Bowling Green University.
Yep.
What do you remember about Bowling Green?
Well, I think the thing that I liked the most about it was how much the professors cared, and how the university gave me a lot of opportunity. I'll give you a good example is, I was the first resident advisor that the university allowed to be a resident advisor as a sophomore. You used to have to be a junior, and I applied as a sophomore. And I remember when I went to the interview, they said, "Well, you're a sophomore." And I said, "I know, but I think I can do the job." And I needed the job. I put myself through college. My family had a bunch of kids, and grocery store income. I had to do some things with scholarships, and I had to work through school. But they made an exception, and they did that. They let me be an RA as a sophomore. I think today they let sophomores be RAs now more, but they didn't back then. So that opportunity, I took accounting with a professor, Park Leathers, who was a chair of the accounting department, and he cared enough to get me into an internship. Now, internships almost didn't exist back then. I mean, today they're just quite prevalent, almost an expectation. But back then, he helped me get an internship. But nobody had an internship before they were a junior, and he got me an internship when I was also a sophomore. So my sophomore year was a good year. But what it allowed me to do was to experiment and take on something faster. And if I had an idea that I could do something ahead of schedule, they supported me in it. They didn't sit back and say, "No, when your time comes, you can do that." And so it really gave me the confidence that, I grew up in a really small town, 1,600 people. I would be in a classroom with 350 people. And what I used to do, how I dealt with it, was I sat in one of the front two rows, because then I couldn't see everybody, everybody in front of me. I felt like I was in my little high school class, and I had to adapt to that. But they gave me a lot of opportunity, and so I've been forever grateful for what I got there.
Mike, why did you want to be an accountant?
Well, I didn't. My father died when my dad was quite young, like 12 years old, and he was an accountant. So my dad was always talking to us about being accountants, and we were all pretty good at math. I wanted to be a lawyer. I loved Perry Mason, when I was growing up. I'm going to really date myself, but I thought, man, to be a lawyer would be a great thing. So I actually went to school to be a lawyer, even though my dad wanted me to be an accountant. But it was really funny. We had an accountant for our store, and quite honestly, she chain smoked cigarettes, drank an awful lot of coffee, was kind of, had a dilapidated car, and your office is kind of a mess. And I kept thinking, well, why do I want to be an accountant? I mean, I didn't have an image of somebody that what accounting was. I certainly did not know at the time what a Big 8 accounting firm was. I didn't have that exposure. And I am where I am today. I can tell you one word: serendipity. I'm just, by pure happenstance, I'm where I am today, because I went to school at Bowling Green. I went to pre-law, and there was a guy who lived on my floor, Steve Baird, who I met like one of the first 2 weeks, and we got to be friends. And he invited me and my roommate, who actually went to my high school, and invited us to their house. They lived in a farm near Shelby, Ohio, and very, what you'd expect, very modest family, hardworking family. And a couple of weeks later, Steve said, hey, my brother is coming through Bowling Green and wants to take us to dinner. He'd already graduated college, and came in and picked us up, dressed really nicely, professionally. And I was just, Kim, his brother's name was Kim, and I was so impressed with Kim Baird. And I remember, I didn't even ask him what he did. I mean, he was just there because he was taking his little brother out to dinner, and his brother's buddy. I didn't ask him what he did. And until the next day, I said, Steve, what exactly does Kim, your brother, do? And he said, well, he's a manager with a Big 8 accounting firm called Peat Marwick and Mitchell, which is now part of KPMG. And I thought, wow. I mean, in my mind, when he was telling me that, I'm trying to reconcile the difference of an accountant of Kim Baird with my dad's accountant from our grocery store. And I'm like, it just opened the world to me. I literally went in and changed my major to accounting, and I got an accounting degree, and then the rest is history. But had I not met Steve Baird on my floor, and then ultimately his brother Kim, I would never have pursued accounting as a profession. So it's just pure happenstance. It's amazing.
How did you find your way to Grant Thornton?
Well, I was with Arthur Andersen for 20 years. I was a partner here in Charlotte. I had my whole career here in Charlotte. And then when Arthur Andersen went away back in 2002, all of the accounting firms came calling on us. And, I did not have Grant Thornton had not been in Charlotte. They actually had bought an accounting firm, Gleberman, Spears, Shepard, and Miniker in January of the year. This happened in March when Andersen got indicted. So Grant Thornton had only been in Charlotte for, say, 3 months, 2.5, 3 months. I didn't know much about him. And as we were talking to the other accounting firms, I wanted to go with a firm that would take all of our people. I didn't want them to take only certain partners. Most of the firms came in and they only wanted the partners because they thought the partners had the client relationships. You get the partners, you get the client relationship, and they didn't want the administrative people, right? And that wasn't what we wanted. I mean, I set a goal when we went down, started thinking about that. I actually wrote my guiding principles. I still have them. I hand wrote them, and I still have them at home. I think I had it laminated, and I've got it in my little archives that I'll read periodically. But I wanted to make sure that it took everybody. And I had some pretty strong negotiating points that were not, I wouldn't compromise on. One, that they had to take everybody. And number two, I wanted a 2-year no-cut clause. I said, when you give our guys in the mailroom a 2-year no-cut clause, we've got a deal. And so nobody would give us that deal. I remember I said I felt like a guy that was, had been to like 20 banks and then declined a loan, and I'm going to bank number 21 to try to get the terms that I wanted. And so one of our partners had somebody from Gleberman, Spears, Shepard, Miniker, the new Grant Thornton in Charlotte, went to church with him, a guy named Bill Spears. And they just started talking after church one day. And Rob Bird, my partner, came in and said, hey, have you thought about Grant Thornton? And I said, no, I haven't, but I know they just opened up in Charlotte. I said, let's see if you can set up a meeting. And they did. I love the culture of the people. And I just thought, this is a firm that's going to really be on the move. And they were willing to take 100% of our people, including the 2 guys in the mailroom, who are both still here with us at Grant Thornton 16 years later. And they agreed to a 2-year no-cut clause. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was, and so because of that, I said, this is a company that's got the right culture for us. And so we joined, and now today, Grant Thornton is 6 times the size it was back, only 16 years ago. So what I thought could happen actually did happen, and it achieved what our goals were, and it achieved our guiding principles, which it's probably the thing that I'll never forget.
You're still young, but you're closer to retirement than the beginning of your career.
Yes, I am.
How do you want to be remembered?
Well, for me, it's more about, I think, you're creating a culture in an organization where it's about stewardship, and to say that, our organization is better as an organization than when we all started. When I started, anybody else. Stewardship is something that is a core value for us in our organization, and how do we leave it? How do we leave it better? And how, I think any kind of a job changes people's lives. I mean, in a lot of cases here, we're hiring kids right out of college, and sometimes it may be their first job, and some have had internships and things of that nature. But it's their first full-time job, and you think about the incredible responsibility that I have as the CEO of the organization to make sure that they're having a rich, rewarding experience as they continue to develop. Because unless you're independently wealthy, you have to work. And one of my favorite sayings is fun and success aren't mutually exclusive. I mean, if you're not having fun at what you're doing, you're not developing, you're not learning new things. It's just, then we're not succeeding. I'm not succeeding as the CEO of the firm. So I thrive on watching our people succeed. And when they get promoted every year, people get promoted and things like that. I just feel pride in them in watching the things that they do. One of the things we do is when people make partner at our firm, we have a signing ceremony, and we sign the signature page of the partnership agreement for all of them that become partners. And it's an emotional time for me. Because I've been around long enough that, I remember when they started with the firm, and now here they are, 12 years later or so, making partner in the firm, a substantial achievement in their life and all this stuff, and they're signing them. I'm telling you, I get choked up at everyone. I hug them, I get really emotional about it because I love them. I do. And I like to see them succeed. So, I think that creating that kind of family environment where people care for each other and want to make a good environment for them is something I want to be known for.
You're still at the grocery store, aren't you, Mike?
I am. I still think about it every day, and I think about what would my dad do in these situations. And it's just, it's funny that you say that, because I really thought about this when I became the CEO. I thought, can we create a culture and environment at scale like we had in my dad's little grocery store? We had a family environment, but we had other employees outside of our family, and it was a culture. One of our cashiers, Loris Brigham, retired probably in 1977, 1978. And she moved to Florida, moved to Florida with her husband. And she died, 5 or 6 years ago, age, I think she's 98 years old. She was well into her 90s. And we still got Christmas cards from her and kept in touch. We did that with everyone that was a part of our store. And it was a culture. And I just remember the feeling that we had. We were very successful. My dad, in the 10 plus years he had that store, we increased our revenues, our sales by over 500%, 5 times. Grant Thornton, guess what? We're up 600% since. But we had a blast while we were doing it. We had financial and business success, and we had a culture and a family environment. And I always thought, can you do that at scale? And that's what I set out to do at Grant Thornton. And now we're one of the top accounting firms, in the world, and in the United States we have 8,800 employees, and by golly, I think we've achieved it. It's always a work in progress, but I think we're really known in the industry for our culture, and our retention is the highest in the industry. And I kind of look back at the store and I think, I say I lost my dad last October, and I still think about it. I think, Dad, we scaled up. We scaled up McGuires Foodland into Grant Thornton in the U.S. and able to do it.
Thanks so much for your time today, Mike.
Okay, thank you. Enjoyed it.
Mike McGuire is CEO of Grant Thornton LLP, an independent accounting and advisory firm. He earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Accounting and Management Information Services from Bowling Green University. And now, a personal word. Mike McGuire identified two core qualities that he seeks in employees: curiosity and courage. Curiosity about the way things are and could be, and the courage to be decisive, to make things happen and affect positive change. Be curious, be courageous. Those are traits at the heart of a good life. There is a wonderful book by Brian Grazer, producer of A Beautiful Mind, Apollo 13, The Da Vinci Code, and many other movies. His book is entitled A Curious Mind: The Secret to a Bigger Life. In a breezy conversational way, Grazer talks about how curiosity explains all his success. He writes, "Curiosity has been the most valuable quality, the most important resource, the central motivation of my life. I think curiosity should be as much part of the culture, our educational system, our workplaces, as concepts like creativity and innovation." Grazer's stated intent is to show how valuable and fun curiosity can be. His book is curious about curiosity. He defines curiosity as wanting to know. Curiosity starts out as an impulse, an urge, but is expressed in the world as something more active and urgent, as a question. Grazer tells a story about how after he graduated college, he went back to campus and asked his favorite professor for 10 minutes to talk over coffee. That conversation lasted 1.5 hours. Grazer said the conversation had greater value for him than sitting in class for an entire semester. He decided to continue to reach out to people and have curiosity conversations, one-on-one discussions with people he found extraordinary: doctors, lawyers, scientists. Grazer asked questions about who they are, what motivates them, their challenges and accomplishments. He is interested in how they find meaning in life. He listens intently, one question leading to the next. Grazer has met a new person for conversation every 2 weeks for 35 years. What are the benefits of being curious? Grazer devotes the entire book to responding to that question. Here are a few of his answers. It helps him make connections. It helps him identify original ideas. It helps him challenge authority. It helps him see the world through other people's eyes. It helps him be more intimate. It helps him be inspired. Grazer makes this point. For curiosity to be effective, it must be harnessed to at least 2 other traits. The first trait is the ability to pay attention to answers. You actually have to absorb whatever it is you're curious about. The second trait is the willingness to act. Change disturbs the status quo, and that's where courage comes in. There are so many definitions of courage. Aristotle took it on long ago, identifying courage as a cardinal virtue, one of the principal virtues upon which all others turn. For him, a brave person takes fear into account and acts rationally in response to it. Courageous people act knowing fear and risk full well. Brené Brown, popular author and research professor in social work, reminds us that the root word for courage is cor, the Latin word for heart. For her, courage means to speak one's mind by telling one's heart. I'm partial to a definition of courage advanced by Jonathan Lear, professor of philosophy at the University of Chicago, who writes that courage is the capacity for living well with the risks that inevitably attend human existence. In plainer language, courage is a form of excellence. A courageous person not only gets the job done, but gets the job done well. Mike McGuire wants his colleagues to ask questions and to solve problems. Curious and courageous people innovate. That gives his firm an edge. Curious and courageous people also create great places to work. This is Mark Paris, and you've been listening to On Life and Meaning. Additional support for this podcast is provided by the UNC College of Arts and Architecture, celebrating a decade of creative education in the arts and design. Thank you to our funding partners and to my teammates, Andy Go, producer of the show, and to Chris Curriton, art and media director. This is how you can help. Please write a review on iTunes. It helps us grow our audience. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We'd love to hear what you think about the show. And become a patron. We are on Patreon, a crowdsourcing platform that allows you to support what you value at a level you choose. Visit us also on our website, onlifeandmeaning.com. Thank you for listening.